My ex lied about being pregnant to keep me paying her rent, so I waited quietly, then made her regret ever using me that way. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and for the longest time, I thought my relationship with Jessica was perfect. When I met her, it was like something out of a movie. She was everything I'd ever wanted. Beautiful, confident, smart, and somehow she saw something in me. I was working long hours at a mid-level job, scraping by to make sure I could support us. But I didn't care about the long hours or the missed weekends. I was in love. And Jessica, she was my world. We moved into a beautiful apartment in the city, a place that felt like it could be our forever home. The walls were lined with pictures of our travels and the furniture we'd picked out together, a constant reminder of how well we fit. From the outside, we looked like the perfect couple. Our friends said we were goals, and I believed them. I poured everything into this relationship, making sure she never wanted for anything. I picked up the extra shifts at work just so we could take vacations, eat out at fancy restaurants, and get her the things she liked. Her smile was worth it. I loved seeing her happy. But there were moments, subtle moments, where things felt ... off. Jessica would occasionally mention how tight money was, how hard it was to manage everything, and how much she depended on me. At first, I brushed it off. She was just stressed, right? I'd tell myself she was just trying to navigate the pressures of adulthood. After all, we were building something together. We had a future to look forward to, but I could tell something was brewing beneath the surface. She didn't say it outright, but I noticed how often she would ask for my help paying rent, covering her phone bill, helping with groceries. Still, I didn't mind. I loved her. This was just part of being in a relationship, right? Little did I know, those small cracks were the first hints of a much bigger story, one that would shatter everything I thought. I knew about love and trust. As time went on, the little comments Jessica made about money became more frequent, almost like a broken record. It wasn't just the bills anymore. It was everything. She would casually mention how she couldn't afford certain things like getting her car fixed or buying new clothes. It wasn't a plea for help, but the words still hung in the air like an unspoken request. I started picking up the slack without even thinking about it. She'd ask if I could cover her half of rent one month, and I'd say, no problem. She'd need a loan to cover something small, and I'd cover it without hesitation, always with the promise she'd pay me back. But I never really expected it back. I was happy to help at first. I didn't think much of it. Relationships have ups and downs, right? Maybe she was just going through a rough patch. I convinced myself she was just struggling, just a little overwhelmed with life. I'd take on more shifts, more hours, just so she didn't have to worry about anything. I didn't mind. I wanted to be the guy who supported her. We were a team, after all. But then came the first argument. It started as a small comment, one I almost ignored. We were sitting on the couch watching TV when she sighed heavily. "I don't know how you do it," she said, almost like it was an afterthought. "You're always working. I don't know what I'd do without you." It should have been a compliment, but the way she said it felt off, like guilt was seeping through her words. I brushed it off and made a joke, telling her I was just being responsible. But she didn't laugh. She just looked at me, almost like she was scrutinizing me. "Do you ever feel like you're doing too much?" she asked quietly. "Like maybe I'm just taking too much from you?" I froze for a second. Was she really questioning my help? Was this her way of saying she felt guilty? I shook it off. "Don't worry about it, Jess. I'm fine. I want to take care of you." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. The tension was there, and for the first time, I wondered if I was seeing something I had been blind to for months. Was I really just the guy who worked while she coasted along, or was I imagining things? The next few days were filled with little comments like that, as if she was testing the limits of what I would do for her. And yet, every time she'd say something, I'd push it aside. I wanted to believe that everything was fine. I wanted to believe that we were fine, but deep down I felt like I was losing grip on something, and I didn't know what it was. It was a Tuesday evening when Jessica dropped the bomb. I remember it like it was yesterday, sitting on the couch, her head resting on my shoulder, the faint light from the TV flickering in the background. Everything felt calm, almost serene. But then she turned to me, her eyes wide and a little too serious. "I'm pregnant," she said. For a second, I couldn't process what she was saying. I thought she was joking. She had to be, right? Jessica always joked about starting a family one day, about how fun it would be to have kids. But her face was different this time. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't laughing. "Wait, are you serious?" I asked, my heart racing. She nodded slowly, her lips trembling slightly. "I took the test this morning. I'm late and I'm scared. I don't know what to do." In that moment, everything seemed to freeze. I didn't know what to feel. Part of me was elated, overwhelmed by the idea of becoming a father. But there was a nagging doubt, something I couldn't shake. The pieces didn't fit. Jessica's financial worries, her dependency on MIT, all clicked into place now. Was she telling the truth? I didn't want to believe it, but there was a part of me that wondered if this was just another one of her She had always used her vulnerability to get what she wanted. But now, I couldn't afford to doubt her. This was too important. This was a baby. I told her we'd figure it out, that we'd handle this together. I promised her everything would be okay, but my voice felt hollow. I told myself it would all be fine, we'd get through this just like everything else. We'd manage. But the more I thought about it, the more the doubt gnawed at me. That night, after she fell asleep, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I thought about her words. "I'm scared." She was scared, sure, but was I being taken for a ride? Was this just another scheme? I didn't want to think about it, but the questions kept creeping in, relentless and impossible to ignore. I wanted to believe in the life we were building, but something in me was screaming that this wasn't what it seemed. The days that followed were a blur of uncertainty. Jessica and I had the conversations that everyone thinks they're supposed to have when faced with unexpected news. We talked about the future, about what this would mean for our relationship, about how we'd handle everything, how we'd raise the baby, how we'd afford it, and what kind of parents we wanted to be. I tried to stay positive, to convince myself that everything would be fine, but something felt off. As the days went by, Jessica didn't seem to show any real urgency about the pregnancy. She wasn't making appointments or taking prenatal vitamins like I thought she would. She didn't even seem to be doing much to prepare for a baby. Instead, she kept talking about things like taking time off from work and relaxing. She'd still ask me for money for her shopping sprees or little luxuries, things we didn't need, but things she convinced me we could afford. I started to feel uncomfortable with the whole situation, but I kept pushing those feelings down. After all, she was pregnant. We had a future to look forward to. She needed me. But then came the first real red flag. It was a weekend, and I was heading to the store when I received a message from Jessica. She asked if I could pick up some things for her clothes, skincare, stuff that wasn't related to the pregnancy at all. It was the same old requests, the same casual "I need this" that had become routine in our relationship. But something about this felt different. This wasn't the behavior of someone preparing for a child. This was someone still caught up in their own world, still acting as if life was about her and her comfort. Asterisk, when I confronted her about it, asking her why she wasn't putting more effort into the pregnancy, she brushed me off. "I'm just not in the mood to think about all that right now," she said, her voice distant. "It's too much. I'm trying to deal with everything else." I remember feeling a wave of frustration crash over me. I wanted to yell, to demand answers. But I didn't. Instead, I just nodded. I told myself I was being paranoid. She was probably just stressed, overwhelmed by the news. It made sense. But the voice in my head wouldn't stop. Something wasn't right. Later that night, I did something I never thought I would, something that still feels like a betrayal to myself. I looked through her phone. I found a text message from a friend, one that shook me to my core. "Are you sure you're ready for all this? I mean, how much longer can you keep pretending?" I froze. Pretending? Pretending about what? And why had she lied to me about being so scared if she was talking to her friends like this? I wanted to confront her right then and there. But I didn't. Instead, I went to bed, feeling a pit in my stomach grow deeper with every passing minute. The next few days felt like I was living in a haze. The more I thought about the text I had found, the more questions I had. I couldn't shake the feeling that Jessica had been lying to me not just about the pregnancy, but about everything. My mind raced, and I couldn't let it go. I had to know the truth. I knew deep down that something wasn't right, but I wasn't ready to face it. Not yet. I spent the whole next day trying to get through work, but my thoughts were consumed by the situation. As soon as I got home, I couldn't wait any longer. I needed answers. I needed to confront her when Jessica walked in. I was sitting at the kitchen table, a knot in my stomach that only tightened as I saw her. She smiled like everything was normal. "Hey babe, how was your day?" she asked, her voice light and carefree. I didn't respond immediately. I couldn't. I just stared at her, trying to find the right words. My mind was a mess of emotions, anger, confusion, hurt, but I kept calm. "I had too, Jessica," I said quietly. "We need to talk." Her smile faltered for a second, but she quickly recovered. "What's wrong?" she asked, her eyes a little too wide. She knew something was coming. "I found a text on your phone," I began, my voice steady but cold. "You told your friend that you're pretending." "Pretending about what, Jessica?" Her face drained of color. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. "Are you lying to me about being pregnant?" I asked, the words leaving my lips before I could stop them. She blinked, and for a moment I thought she was going to deny it. But then, to my horror, she just sat down across from me and looked away. "I didn't want you to know," she said, her voice small. "I didn't know how to tell you." I felt the world shift beneath me as she continued. "I thought if I told you I was pregnant, you'd stick around. You'd keep paying the bills, taking care of everything. I didn't know how to make it stop, how to make you see me for who I am, ... My heart dropped into my stomach. I didn't know what hurt more, the fact that she had lied to me, or that she thought so little of me. I had been a fool, hadn't I? "I'm not pregnant, okay?" she finally admitted, looking up at me, her eyes filled with something I couldn't read. "It was all a lie. I just wanted you to keep helping me. I thought it would work." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The woman I had sacrificed so much for, the woman I thought I was building a future, every penny, every favor, every moment I gave her it, was all a manipulation. I stood up, my hands trembling, but I didn't show her my anger. I couldn't let her see me lose control. "Get out," I said, my voice cold. "I need you to leave. Now." For the first time, I saw something genuine in her eyes, flicker of fear. But I didn't care. It didn't matter. I had been betrayed, and I wasn't going to let her make a fool out of me any longer. The days after Jessica left were the hardest I've ever faced. I felt hollow, like someone had ripped out a part of me that I couldn't get back. I didn't want to believe it at first, but the truth sank in like a stone at the bottom of my chest. She had used me. She had manipulated me with the one thing I cared about most: trust. And now it was gone. I remember sitting in the apartment, staring at the walls, which suddenly felt too big, too empty. The place where we once laughed and made plans now seemed like a prison. I didn't want to leave, but I didn't want to stay either. My thoughts were a tangled mess, and the weight of betrayal suffocated me. I couldn't get out of bed for the first few days. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just laid there, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the little things I missed about her. How she'd smile when I'd bring her coffee in the morning, how she'd tell me I was the best boyfriend. Every sweet word she'd ever said to me now felt like a cruel joke. The worst part wasn't even the lies. It wasn't even the manipulation. It was the fact that I had trusted her so fully. I had given her everything emotionally, financially, physically, and she had taken it all without a second thought. I spent hours going through everything she had left behind: clothes, old notes, pictures. The things that once filled me with love now felt like reminders of my own weakness. I kept telling myself I wasn't weak, but I felt like I was losing myself in the aftermath. I had never felt more exposed. More stupid. Then came the phone call. It was late, maybe around 10 p.m., when I heard my phone buzz on the table. I picked it up, expecting another spam call or someone from work. But when I saw her name on the screen, my heart nearly stopped. It was Jessica. I should have ignored it. I knew that, but I picked up the phone anyway. I said, my voice sounding more tired than I wanted it to, "Hey, ... it's me." Her voice was shaky, uncertain. "Can we talk?" I couldn't believe it. After everything, after the lies, after the hurt, she was calling me to talk. I almost laughed, but I was too drained. "What do you want, Jessica?" There was a long pause on the other end. Then, "I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I never meant to hurt you." Hearing those words after everything was like a slap in the face. She was sorry now. Was it guilt, or just another way to manipulate me? "You had your chance," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to hear it. I can't." And with that, I hung up. I didn't even wait for her to respond. I felt numb, but a part of me tiny part of me felt something else. Something like relief. It wasn't closure, not yet. But it was a step. A small step. The days following that call felt like a strange, detached kind of existence. I was neither here nor there, trapped between anger and numbness, trying to figure out what to do next. I had gotten a taste of betrayal, and now, more than ever, I wanted something for myself. Something to prove that I wasn't just a pawn in Jessica's game. I wasn't just the guy who paid her rent and financed her life. I was more than that. I knew the best way to deal with this wasn't through emotional outbursts or apologies. No, this time, I had to think. And I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. If I was going to get any closure, I needed to hit her where it hurt most, her pride. I started small. The first thing I did was cut off all financial ties. I canceled the joint bank account we'd shared, where she had access to my funds for months without me realizing it. I had been paying for everything, but now I was done. But it wasn't just about the money anymore. That was the easy part. The harder part was taking back control over my life, over my emotions. I focused on work, threw myself into my passion projects. Things that had been put on the back burner when I'd been so absorbed in making her happy. I didn't just want to heal, wanted to come out of this stronger, but there was more to it. I knew that Jessica wasn't just going to let me go quietly. She had a way of worming herself back into people's lives when she needed something. I had seen it before with her exes. She always had a way of making people feel guilty for leaving her. I wasn't going to let her do that to me. A few weeks passed, and I kept my distance, not letting myself get drawn into her drama. But then, one night, I received another message from her. It was late, around midnight. I hadn't been expecting it, but I knew it was coming. I miss you. I know I messed up. Please, let's talk. I'm really sorry. I need you. I stared at the message for a long time, my fingers hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to respond, to fall back into the role she'd cast me in, the guy who would always show up when she needed him. But I stopped myself. I wasn't that guy anymore. I had learned that the hard way. Instead, I let the message sit there, unopened, for a few hours. When I finally opened it, I read it carefully, but I didn't reply, and then I deleted it. All traces of her gone. It felt like a victory, but I knew this was only the beginning. She wasn't done with me yet, and when she came back, I would be ready. The weeks dragged on, and I kept my distance, focusing on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into my work, started seeing friends again, and even picked up a few hobbies I'd neglected. The weight of Jessica's betrayal still lingered, but it was lighter now. I was starting to feel like myself again, even if just a little bit. But I knew. She was out there somewhere, probably trying to piece her own life together, but I could sense that she would come back. She always did. She was a master at making people feel needed, wanted, and when her supply of attention and money ran out, she'd come looking for me again. It wasn't until one night, out of nowhere, that I realized just how deep her manipulations went. I was out for drinks with some friends when I saw something that stopped me dead in my tracks. My phone buzzed on the table, and I glanced at it. It was a message from a number I didn't recognize. I think you should know that Jessica has moved on. She's seeing someone else. A guy from her work? I don't know if you care, but I thought you should know. I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of the message. A part of me felt a sick satisfaction finally she'd found someone else to leech off of. But another part of me, the part that had once cared deeply for her, felt a sharp pang in my chest. I couldn't help but wonder what she was telling him. Was she using him the same way she used me? Was she already starting her next cycle, playing another man for her own gain? The thing was, I wasn't even surprised. This was Jessica's pattern. She'd always find someone to attach herself to when she needed something. And now, it seemed, I was the last thing on her mind. She had moved on quickly. Like I was nothing more than a stepping stone. I was still staring at my phone. When my friend's voice broke through my thoughts. "Dude, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I nodded, slipping the phone into my pocket, forcing myself to shake it off. "Yeah, I'm fine. It's just, I don't know. Something doesn't feel right." As the night went on, I couldn't stop thinking about the message. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it didn't matter anymore. Jessica had moved on, yes, but she hadn't truly changed. She was still the same manipulative person I had known. and I would be damned if I let her get away with using me without facing the consequences. I made a decision that Nitai wasn't going to just let her slip away quietly. I would make sure she knew exactly what she had done, and when the time came, I would expose her. The next few weeks were a careful game of patience. I wasn't about to rush into anything. I had learned the hard way that acting out of anger would only give Jessica the power she craved. No, I was going to play it smart. I wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. I kept hearing things about her new guy. Her friends would casually mention him when we'd run into each other at mutual places. Small mentions of how great he was, how much she deserved him. Every time my stomach would churn, but I would just nod and smile, masking the rage simmering beneath the surface. She was already on to her next victim, and I was just a memory. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not after everything she had put me through. I started putting things in motion, making sure Jessica thought everything was fine. I knew her too well. She liked to think she was always in control, that she could always manipulate me if she needed to. So, I fed her ego. I played the part of the forgiving ex, the one who was okay with everything, who had let go of the past. I would send a text now and then, short messages that seemed harmless enough. Hope everything's going well, or I'm doing fine, just focusing on work. Nothing too personal, nothing that would give her a reason to doubt me. But it kept her engaged. She would reply with polite, almost distant messages, but that was all I needed. I was planting seeds, making sure she thought I was still interested, still her guy deep down. But what she didn't know was that I was preparing for the perfect moment. And that moment came when I saw her post a picture with her new boyfriend on social media. It was a typical couple's pic in a fancy restaurant. Her looking radiant, him smiling like he had no idea what he was getting into. I knew this was my shot. I wasn't going to sit in the shadows anymore. It was time to expose her for who she really was, the woman who used everyone around her and discarded them when they were no longer useful. I waited until the following day, giving her just enough time to bask in the glow of her new relationship. Then I did something I'd been planning for weeks. I posted a message, but it wasn't just any message. It was a long, detailed account of everything she had done, how she manipulated me, how she used her lies to get what she wanted. I didn't hold back. I shared everything. Every moment, every red flag I had ignored. Every time she asked for money, every time she fed me another lie to keep me around, I hit send before I could second-guess myself. And just like that, Jessica's carefully curated life was about to come crashing down. The hours after, I posted the message felt like a whirlwind of chaos, but also a strange sense of calm. It was done. I had exposed her for what she truly was. I could feel the weight lift off my chest, but the anxiety began to creep in. I knew this wouldn't be easy for her, and I certainly wasn't expecting her to just sit back and take it. But I didn't care anymore. I had to do this. It wasn't long before my phone started buzzing. At first, it was a few messages from friends who had seen the post, expressing their shock and support. But then, Jessica's name popped up on my screen, and my heart sank. I hesitated for a second, then swiped the screen to answer. "Why did you do that?" Jessica's voice was raw, almost pleading. It didn't sound like the confident, manipulative woman I'd known. This was desperation. She was panicked. I took a deep breath. "Why did I do it?" "You've been using me for months, Jessica. You lied to my face. You lied about being pregnant, about needing help, about everything. You don't get to play the victim now." There was silence on the other end, a long pause that felt like an eternity. Then she spoke, her voice shaking. "I didn't think you'd actually do this. I thought we could still be friends, that we could move past this. Move past it," I repeated, my voice rising now, a mix of anger and disbelief. "You took everything from me, Jessica. You used me. You didn't think about me once. I wasn't just your friend or your support system. I was your puppet. You just didn't want to let me go." Another silence, and I could hear her breathing heavily. Then, almost in a whisper, "I never meant for it to go this far." I didn't know how to stop. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. "It's too late for apologies. You can't just say sorry and expect everything to be fine. You've hurt too many people, Jessica, and I'm done being one of them." There was a soft sob on the other end of the line. It wasn't the kind of sob I expected, fake and manipulative. This one sounded real. But it didn't change anything. She had manipulated me emotionally and financially, and now she was trying to manipulate me into feeling sorry for her. But I was done. "I'm not sorry," I said quietly. "I'm not sorry for what I did. I don't owe you anything anymore." She didn't respond. After a few seconds, I heard the line go dead. The call ended, leaving nothing but the weight of the silence that hung between us. I sat there for a moment, staring at the screen. Part of me expected her to call back, to beg for forgiveness. But I knew better now. She had gotten what she wanted for so long, control over me, but now the tables had turned, and I felt no satisfaction, just emptiness. But this wasn't about feeling satisfied. It was about finally taking control of my life. It was about ending the cycle of manipulation. For good, the next few days were a blur of messages, calls, and social media notifications. The post I had shared about Jessica's lies had gone viral in our circles, shared by friends, acquaintances. Even mutual acquaintances of hers who had never liked me, but suddenly found a voice in the storm I had created. People who had been in the dark about her. Manipulations were finally seeing the real side of her, but it didn't feel as satisfying as I thought it would. I had expected a sense of victory, a rush of triumph. Instead, all I felt was a strange emptiness. Maybe I had hoped that exposing her would finally give me closure. But nothing was simple anymore. Jessica's reaction was swift. She went silent at first, then began scrambling to save face. The message I had posted, with all the details of her lies, was still circulating online, and she tried everything she could to get it deleted. She reached out to friends, asking them to take down any shared posts, but the damage was already done. People had seen it. And they had talked. I was no longer the fool in this story. She was Dot. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. The confrontation. In public, I was walking into a coffee shop when I saw her, standing by the counter, talking to a group of people. She hadn't seen me yet, and I stood there for a moment, watching her. Her eyes were red, her makeup smudged from crying. She looked lost, but it didn't matter anymore. This was her reckoning. One of the people she was talking to noticed me first. They glanced at Jessica, then back at me, with a knowing look. The tension in the room was palpable. Slowly, Jessica turned, and when she saw me, her face went pale. For a moment, I thought she might cry, but then she did something unexpected. She straightened her back, walked up to me, and tried to put on that familiar mask of confidence. "You had to do this, didn't you?" she said, her voice shaking but sharp. "You just had to tear me apart in front of everyone." I didn't answer. I just looked at her. No words. No more excuses. The people around us were staring now, some with pity, some with curiosity. I could feel the weight of their judgment, but I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I had nothing to hide. I wasn't the one who had betrayed trust. I wasn't the one who had manipulated and lied. "You did this to yourself," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I didn't force you to lie to me. I didn't make you use me. You made that choice?" She looked around, her eyes darting, trying to find someone to back her up, but no one spoke. The silence was deafening. She asked, her voice barely a whisper now. "Why didn't you just let me be? Why expose me like this?" "I didn't want to, Jessica," I said, my tone softening just a bit. "But you made me. You used me, and I wasn't going to let you keep doing it to other people. Not anymore." Her eyes filled with tears. She opened her mouth to say something, but before she could, I turned and walked away. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need her to admit anything. The damage had been done, but so had my healing. I wasn't the same person who had fallen for her tricks. I wasn't the same person who thought love meant sacrificing myself. I had finally walked away. Truly on, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't realized I needed. The only thing I could feel now was relief. The days that followed were quieter, filled with a strange sense of peace. It felt like the world had shifted on its axis, but this time it was for the better. Jessica's calls stopped. The messages, the manipulations, the false apologists all vanished. And as much as I had braced myself for the guilt and the second-guessing, it never came. Not this time. Instead, I found myself waking up every day with a sense of clarity I hadn't had in years. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. There was no rage burning inside me, no need for revenge. I had gotten what I needed, closure. The lies had been exposed. The weight of my past relationship had been lifted. And now I could finally move on. I threw myself into work even more. The projects I'd put on hold for so long suddenly became my passion again. I started going to the gym, reconnecting with old friends, doing things that were just for me. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was living for anyone else. One evening, a few weeks after the fallout, I ran into Jessica again, this time, unexpectedly. It was at a small cafe I frequented, and I almost didn't recognize her. She was with a group of people, laughing, but there was an emptiness in her eyes. The confident, manipulative version of Jessica had vanished. It was like she was a shadow of herself, someone who had lost her sense of control. She saw me, and for a second, her face froze. I saw her eyes flicker with that old-look guilt mixed with anger, but this time, I wasn't affected. I didn't feel the need to confront her again, or make her feel bad. I didn't need to. She had already been exposed. Her world was crumbling without me having to say a word. I simply nodded at her, my expression calm but indifferent, and then I turned back to my table. It was a quiet moment of power. I wasn't the victim anymore. I wasn't the one being manipulated. As I left the cafe later that night, a wave of peace washed over me. It was over. She was no longer a part of my life, and I was finally free. I had taken control of my own story. I had learned my lessons the hard way, but in the end, I had come out stronger. I wasn't the same guy who had been blindly helping her, thinking I was in love. I wasn't the same guy who had let her lie and take advantage of me. Now, I was the guy who could walk away, the guy who didn't let anyone make him feel less than he deserved. And that was the most empowering thing I had ever done for myself.